My name is Susu, and I am married to Jeff, and we have 3 darling children. A daughter, Lily, 16, and a son, Sammy, 14, and our 9-year-old daughter is here, Ava. So Jeff and I will be married this year for 20 years. And I must start, before we were married, in being raised in the church. From the time I was born, I was raised in the faith, loving the Lord with all my heart. My grandmothers used to sing me hymns and take us to church and talk to us about just having enough faith the size of a mustard seed that the Lord speaks of in the Bible. So I knew when I was very small that it wasn't us who had to be great. It was the Lord. And I saw that from the time I was very small. So I was raised in Christian schools, and when I met Jeff after college, we did commit our lives to each other, putting the Lord as the king of our marriage, as the head of our household. And we counseled with our pastor who married us, and we gave our word to the Lord that we would always put him first. So we had so many good, wonderful years together, and we had, the children seemed to just come along naturally as God continued to bless us. And Jeff was working so hard during all of those years in order for me to stay home with our children, which was the biggest joy of my life. But the work that he worked in was down at the market, and it required him to go to work around 1 o'clock, 1:30 every morning. And I don't know, he might come home around 3 sometimes, but it was not being with the normal waking people hours. So he had some stresses that I couldn't really relate to all the time. And I think through the years, with each child that came along, the pressures became a little bit greater on him to provide for us and to allow me to stay home. And it was an environment that was definitely void of any kind of faith, that's for sure. So the pressures were high, and I know that Jeff can explain that to you later. But, there was a lot of greed and, a lot of pressure to succeed. And during that time when he would be going to work early in the morning and then come home, and the house would be crazy and the children always wanted him and I needed him. And it goes without saying, I'm sure a lot of men understand that. But about 8 or 9 years ago, I saw the pressure really getting to Jeff, and it started affecting our marriage. And we started little by little growing apart. And I felt the fissure starting to happen. But I didn't know what to do about it. And I would pray all along because of the faith that my grandparents had passed down to me and my parents had passed down to me. But there was never a clear answer of what turn or what we were to do to make it better. And I talked to Jeff about it, and, he knew there was issues happening, but things just kind of kept getting harder and harder. And, they just got to a point where they were out of control at certain points. And probably for a couple of years, I became extremely anxious because I felt at times that God was silent. And I didn't have the answers what to do, but our home had truly maybe imploded with the pressures from his work and the long hours and just the difficulties of raising children. all of the things that can happen. And I was turning to the Lord, but now that I look back on it, I recognize that I still wanted to be in control, and I wanted to be the one to make the change. And I wanted Jeff to make changes according to my standards, or, how I would tell him to live a better life. And I really wasn't putting God at the steering wheel. I kept my hand on that steering wheel, and just when I think that I would let go, I still never wanted to let go. It was as if I thought I knew better, but I thought that God needed me. And so my situation was that of me not trusting the Lord, even though I knew and I had been trained in the faith to fully put my trust in Him. But when those tests came, I did not fully trust that He could do the job without me. And so there came a point in our family where Jeff and it was very difficult, but we had to make a difficult decision to separate for a time while we worked through this. And during that time, I didn't know what the answer was going to be. And I was in a Bible study. And there were many times where I would go to Bible study and I was so out of control in my heart that I almost didn't go to the Bible study, because I thought I can't go and sit at the table with people who are at peace, learning about what God says, and I'm so anxious inside, and I feel, I won't be able to calm down and hear what God has to say. But I have to tell you, it was at those times when I was my most vulnerable, and my body and my feelings did not want to hear what God had to say, that I would go against my feelings and go to the Bible study anyway, and Christ would speak His words to me and allow me to hear people, even from the Old Testament, Genesis, about Abraham being afraid. He would teach me about people from the Old Testament who were just like me. And I recognized that God had put those stories there that I'd heard in school and in church and sang hymns in the choir. And I guess I had taken them for granted or not thought about them as human like me. And for the first time in my life, I saw those people like Abraham and Jacob and Joseph, and they were just like me, and they were afraid, and there were times that they didn't want to trust the Lord, but God was who was faithful to them, not them consistently being perfect and faithful to God, but it was God who was faithful to them. And during this time too, I held on to a Bible verse that really did help me, because there were times where I couldn't speak because Jeff meant everything to me and my family meant everything to me. And it had fallen apart. But this is a beautiful verse, and so often in life when we go through hard times, we don't often know the words to say. And God knows how we're feeling, and He speaks. His Holy Spirit speaks for us and intercedes. And this verse is from Romans 8:26. In the same way, the Spirit helps us in our weakness. We do not know what we ought to pray for, but the Spirit Himself intercedes for us with His groans that words cannot express. And that was, thank you, Jeff, that was the verse that I truly held on to during those dark times, because I didn't have the words, and I didn't know always what direction God wanted me to go forward in. And yet he interceded for me in my time of pain. And the message I'm sharing with you tonight is that I'm the person that kept not trusting the Lord, and I'm the person that kept running from him and fell away and ignored his plan for me, and yet he was always there for me. And what I didn't know at that time was he had a really great plan for our family and our marriage, and Jeff and I, that I couldn't see at that time. And he was interceding and planning those things even when I couldn't see them. And so when Jeff and I reached out for help and got a lot of counseling, and we were committed to that, and our whole family got help, and we worked long and hard on it. And I opened my heart to forgiveness, and Jeff opened his heart to God's work in his life, and there were miracles that happened that nobody would ever believe. It looked hopeless, but God was working hard behind the scenes. And when we came together and we put our hearts together and surrendered to the Lord and got the help that we needed, he started doing great things through us. And he started helping Jeff and I come together in a new way, trying to think about Jeff leaving that lifestyle that had hurt our family and starting a new one. So it was like the pains of childbirth, that you don't know yet what great joy is ahead. And so we went through all those pains, but we did trust the Lord imperfectly on my dad, both of us, in our weakness, but he was able to do great things. Because when we came back together, Jeff and I knew more than any two people on this earth our tendencies to be weak, and him perhaps, having a lot of work to do, and me maybe holding bitterness or not trusting the Lord. But we said, we're going to do something together, and we started planning together what our new life would be like. And we planned kind of small, now that I look back on it, something that God intended to be much greater. We started a small delivery business where we have all of our children go and pass out flyers in as many mailboxes as we could think of. And with Jeff's old connections at the market, which he no longer was there, he knew, he had worked with produce for 20 years at the market. He knew the most beautiful pieces of produce and what families would love. And we started out just delivering into homes, and it took off. We would both go down to the market real early in the morning after dropping the children off at school. And Jeff, we still, had issues where I would like to be in control, but he wanted to be in control. But we kind of were humorous about it. But he is a perfectionist. So we would gather everybody's orders together and put them so beautifully in boxes that people would be amazed at these boxes that they would receive at their doorstep. And it grew. God blessed us so much that it grew to the degree that we couldn't barely handle all the orders that we got in the days. During that first year. And that's when we started formulating the idea, well, maybe we should get a warehouse, or we should get maybe a storefront. And the storefront at 108 Main Street, that some of you may know as Kelly's Meat Market, was there for 40 years, came up for rent. And we said, should we? And we did. And we really were eating off a little bit more than we could chew now that we look back on it. But we couldn't believe the doors that God was opening for us, and we kept looking at each other with every moment that the business was being successful. We were in amazement, but then again I wasn't, because that was the God that I knew, and He was the God that had done miracles in Jeff, in my life, and with our family. So why wouldn't He do more miracles for us? And it took us about 9 months to refurbish the store front, and we opened really not knowing how to run a retail business. We were without sleep, but very enthusiastic, and we learned as we went. We took all of our gifts and just used our gifts and dedicated the store to the Lord, and we have continued to be weak and fall backwards a lot of times, and sometimes our wills clash, and I want it my way and Jeff wants it his way, and we're still imperfect, but our Heavenly Father has been so good to us. I just can't sing His praises enough, and the work is hard, and it's long hours, and it takes everything we have, but I'm grateful to be able to have a new birth in our marriage and our family and our lives together, and I always will see this store as a gift from God. It's His direct goodness to us, and it's all because He has been endlessly faithful to us, even in our shortcomings. And so as hard work as it is, and as challenging as times as it is for us to be partners in marriage and business, I think we do a pretty good job. I'd call us creative entrepreneurs. Well, entrepreneurs, I'm sorry. But I'm thankful, and we've just been really grateful, and we're able to continue to honor the Lord both in our marriage and at work. So, thank you.
Do you have any tips for us, for the audience? Because your story is not unusual.
Right.
But so what did you learn from this amazing journey that you could share with us?
Oh, so many things. I think what I learned is that we don't always have to be so strong, and I think surrendering sometimes is what we have to do, because on this earth, it seems we go from one test to the next, and we get tired, and we don't know why we can't face each test that we go through in this world well, or we feel insufficient. And it seems those tests come pretty hard and fast with each year that we live. But I think realizing that I can surrender, and I can constantly, and sometimes it's day to day, I'm giving it back to Him. I'm taking control, and then I'm giving it back to Him, and I'm thinking, oh, I know why this isn't going right. It's because I'm trying to be in charge and not allowing God to be in charge. So I think it's a constant game that we all play, and it's surrendering and letting Him be the one in control and in charge of our lives, and knowing that He has good works for all of us to do. And it's not of our own accord. So,
very good.
Any other questions? Anybody have any questions? What's your biggest seller?
Our biggest seller, well, might be our fruit smoothies that Jeff makes so magically. Sometimes people add kale or spinach. They make it, kind of green. then the next biggest seller might be all of our pre-cut fruit and our peeled clementines, things that are ready to have an easier time incorporating health into your lifestyle. And that truly is our best sellers, along with all of Jeff's salads that he creates. So those are our best sellers. Okay, thank you so much.